If you like old TV shows, you've definitely heard of Have Gun Will Travel, and you must be a huge Paladin fan. But now that you think about it, the guy who played Paladin's cracker is nowhere to be found. What really happened to Paladin from Have Gun Will Travel? That's what this video is about. On June 18th, 1917, a star came to Earth in the form of Richard Allen Boone. It was a blessing, in the area around Los Angeles. After all this time, everyone knows that his connection with his father was not healthy. Boone had to fight his father's wish for him to become a lawyer when he was a teenager. It got so bad that they began to dislike each other. There was no doubt in Boone's mind that he wanted to be much more than just a lawyer. Just because he was lazy or bad at studying wasn't the reason. Not at all. He worked very hard, but he also wanted to be a person who made a difference in the world. Also, he was sure he wouldn't be able to do that since he was a lawyer. His artistic skills showed up pretty early on, but you'll be shocked to learn that they weren't his well-known acting skills. Instead, they were painting skills. It wasn't like the guy left home against his father's wishes. He chose to be a good kid first and become a lawyer. It wasn't just a choice. During a short time, he studied at Stanford to become a lawyer, but he was lucky to be able to leave that school. It's not really fair to say that the attack on Pearl Harbor was a lucky event, but things happened, and Boone joined the US Navy during World War II. After the successful bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Boone was finally able to come home from the battlefield. This time, he had decided that he was sick of other people making decisions for him, and that he was ready to change his life. He was passionate about what he did, and that flame drove him to make acting his job. Let's talk about his work now that we know what his starting point is. Boone quickly learned that being an actor wasn't as easy as it seemed after he decided to work in Hollywood. He knew he had to put in a lot more effort than when he was a law student. But he kept going because he loved it, and in the end he got a part in Call Me Mr., which turned out to be his big break when he got a supporting part in 1951. People all over the world became interested in his rough appearance and strong playing style in his later movies, like Red Skies of Montana 1952, which came out in the same year. The part he played in Halls of Montezuma in 1951 seemed like the best chance in his long and successful career, which helped him get much bigger parts than the ones he was doing at the time. Some big names in the acting world get a lead role and then decide they'll never do a supporting part again. Boone's career was different. Being Boone was an odd job, even for Hollywood standards, since his roles are a mix of supporting parts in big movies and lead parts in smaller ones. Some people in the business thought that was stupid of him, but they're no longer artists, so joke's on them. Fans still think of Boone, so he's still alive and well. Following that plan helped him slowly become known as an extremely skilled actor who can make you a lot of money. His dedication to his job and accuracy in portraying personalities were both taken into account. Because of all of that, he got a lot more parts, and in the end, he started making the switch to TV. Guys, hold on, because I'm about to teach you some history. As you already know, the 1950s were a great time for television and all of its goods, especially in the Western Hemisphere. Boone made a big splash with Have Gun Will Travel around this time. You must be thinking what made Boone a TV star, and that's what we'll tell you. It was a picture he painted of the great Paladin. He was a person who was covered in problems and secrets. Also, you should know that Have Gun Will Travel is the only reason why his most famous act is still admired by many and is thought to be one of the best westerns ever made. Even though it's been 50 years, it was all because of how well he played Paladin. The first big break in Richard Boone's TV career came from his amazing performance in the groundbreaking show The Medic. In this show, he played a hospital surgeon, and by doing so, he brought the world of medicine to the big screen with a healthy dose of reality and real medical processes. There was a lot of buzz about the show because it was different from other hospital dramas. It was all because of his famous performance. We're not just saying this to flatter him. Boone was nominated for 2 Emmys for his work on the show. Today is the late 1950s, so let's skip ahead to the past, because this time made Boone's job what it is today. As we've already said, Boone played Paladin in the 1950s. The mysterious and thoughtful hitman in the Western series Have Gun Will Travel was not only a hit, but it became a TV icon. When the American West was recovering from the Civil War, if people found a guy who would do anything for a small fee of $1,000, they would go crazy over him. Have Gun Will Travel was a fast-paced action show with deep characters that wasn't like any other Western show at the time. You should know that Gene Roddenberry directed a lot of the shows. Do you know who that is? He is actually the person who made the first Star Trek. Everyone loved what he made because Paladin wasn't like other gunslingers from the Old West. He lived in a fancy hotel in San Francisco and always wore high-end suits that looked like gamblers' outfits from a riverboat and a top hat. You won't find anyone as charismatically brave as he is. As his business cards say, Have Gun Will Travel. Which shows his unique brand of professionalism and respect. Paladin was smart, funny, and had a strong sense of right and wrong, which set him apart from his killer friends. The man had guns with him at all times. Mostly, though, he was seen using his brains and being smart. With his unique skills, he was able to trick his enemies while wearing a black Stetson and a suit that looked both dangerous and stylish. The secret that always surrounded Paladin was one of the most interesting things about him. Nothing, not a single person in the world, ever learned what his real name was. The TV version of him is not the only one like that. He always went by the name Clay Alexander, even in the books. Fans still don't know who he really is. It's interesting that his name, Paladin, comes from the old European word Paladino, which means a knight or defender who is dedicated to good causes. It was a good name for a mercenary like Paladin, who had a heart for good acts and had been in the military before. During the long 224 episodes of adventure and suspense, Paladin and his trusty friend went on many crazy adventures. Because of this, Have Gun Will Travel became a timeless classic in television history and kept viewers guessing about who the main character was. Did you know that there's a story that Richard Boone's Paladin figure was a copy? Well, that means that his figure might have been based on a real-life cowboy legend named Victor DaCosta. You want to know why people are talking about it? That's why Victor DaCosta used to ride in rodeos under the name Paladin, a long time before the show aired. DaCosta used to have fancy business cards and clothes that looked like they were from a Western movie, which is another reason. It was all black, like the coldest winter night. The reports did seem to have some truth to them, since DaCosta wasn't happy with Have Gun Will Travel and sued CBS over it. He said they stole his style and personality without his permission. There was a lot of drama in the courts for years, until they came to a clear decision. Something that needs to be pointed out is that Chinese characters like Hey Boy and Hey Girl made short appearances. If the drama came out today, it might have caused some eyebrows to raise, but luckily for them, that wasn't a problem back then. Hey Boy was given a real name in the end, Kim Chang, and when he became famous, he was even given a family and a story. Paladin was also unique because he wasn't a strict farmer. He was bendy, like water, which can change its shape. One of the most out-of-the-box things he did was fully accept Chinese culture and show off his kung fu and other martial arts skills. This was a very interesting scene because it was so far ahead of its time. All the stereotypes were broken and a positive view of different countries was shown. Have Gun Will Travel was one of the first movies to show Native Americans in a good light. It was very different from how they are usually portrayed in westerns, where they are wild bad guys. It was pretty clear that the show was popular, but when its radio version came out, it was even more clear. The best thing about this spin-off was that the handsome John Danner played Paladin. Danner was famous for his roles in Western TV shows in the 1950s and 1960s, and he also played roles in The Twilight Zone. The 106 episodes of Have Gun Will Travel, which aired from 1958 to 1960, captivated both viewers and reviewers. The follow-up was so good that it was nominated for 3 Emmys and won Gene Roddenberry the 1957 Guild of America Award for Best Original Script. The show's music was even more like a national song. If you think we're lying, we just need you to listen to it once. The Ballad of Paladin, which was written by Bernard Herrmann, has a 99% chance of becoming your new favorite song. Another interesting thing about the show, the theme music for the beginning came from a 1951 movie that became famous thanks to Paladin. Here is an idea for you. What a huge deal it would be if there was a hip-hop version of the Ballad of Paladin and the famous rapper played the lead role. Well, look at the hype that's already going strong inside you. In 2006, when a report started going around that Eminem was going to take over the ballad, that's how everyone felt. Everything has an end date, and so did our Paladin. The fans were about to cry, not because the character was killed off. It was because they killed off the character so badly. People stopped looking at Paladin when the show's finale played and the end of the story was getting close. Instead, they looked at a guy named Boone. The person named Boone, on the other hand, didn't seem to be important at all, only Paladin seemed to be valuable. No one cared enough to tell Boone that the show was over, which broke his heart. He read about it in a bunch of papers, not from a friend or a boss. I thought that was very rude, and it may have made Boone understand that they only saw him as a way to make money, which is why he quit the business. Even after 3 long years, Boone's view of the business didn't change much. In an interview with the Los Angeles Times, he talked about some of the problems he had working in TV and how hard it was for him to balance being creative with making money. It was getting harder and harder for him to do his best work in TV, he told everyone. He was disappointed with how much the business focused on glitz and glamour. Being driven to live a simpler life away from Hollywood's chaos, Richard Boone packed his things and moved to the peaceful shores of Hawaii with his third wife, CLA, Malin, and their child. Making this choice cut Boone off from the business for good, which was a big change in his life. Many people thought that he left Hollywood not because his life as a knight came to an end, but because his compilation show, The Richard Boone Show, was dropped. That helped him get along with people in the film business again and gave him time to focus on things that were important to him outside of Hollywood. If Boone was upset about something, he didn't hold back and said what was on his mind. When the business bit him, he set the record straight by saying, "I don't want to live in Southern California anymore." He didn't just quit the industry because he was dumped. He didn't want to be committed to any more TV shows. He could easily return to the industry because it was only a 4-hour trip from LA. Another reason he left LA was that Hollywood schools didn't have enough different kinds of people. His dream was for his son to walk with kids from all walks of life, and in Hawaii, that dream came true. In an interview from 1971, Boone said, "I got what I was looking for in Hawaii. Hawaii became the place where his heart felt at peace." It's time to go. On.he would say, "I still love Hawaii and I'll always go back there even after living there for a long time." He said that on the Big Island, holding on to his Kona Costa boat is like holding on to a valuable heirloom. Boone had a deep love for Hawaii that he even put on a show for the 1968 movie Kona Coast and played a role that was important to him. He had hopes of making it into a series, and he wanted to leave his mark on the island's movie scene for good. That was also like his return to the business when he started having back-to-back hits with Pacific, then Big Jake in 1971, and then The Shootist in 1976. When Boone came into the business with a fresh new attitude, it was the start of a new era. His voice acting in the cartoon TV version of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit in 1977 was truly amazing. Boone was also in a number of Western TV movies in the early 1900s. From 1972 to 1974, NBC showed a mystery movie every week, and he played Heck Ramsey in one of them. Some of the adventures that MacLeod, Columbo, and Macmillan and his wife went on in turn were shown in the series. He was more than just Paladin. It was a part of him that no one will ever forget. He changed into a better person after the Paladin in him died. He used to say that he had very different ideas about playing. For him, it wasn't just a job, it was a way of life. And in a conversation in 1963, he said, "Talent is not a golden rarity among humans. There are more talented people in the world than there are pretty girls and bald guys. Sadly, most talented people go unnoticed their whole lives. There's no other choice for people who want to be good players. They need to do it." This is how he felt about acting after he said goodbye to Paladin. In 1970, Boone chose to move to St. Augustine, Florida. Although he wasn't the center of attention, he began to do what he had always wanted to do since he was a kid. She picked up a paintbrush and began making art that made everyone who saw it feel alive. He wanted to motivate people the same way he did when he was the Paladin. For most of the 1970s, he kept his creative fires burning. But he also became a mentor to new artists and taught them how to get around Hollywood. He wasn't just the actor who played Paladin in a movie, he was now the in his unique way, Richard Boone, a professor at Flagler College in St. Boone, taught a lesson that echoed like a word in the wind. "He always told me not to become a performer. It may seem strange that one of the best actors of his time was telling people not to become actors, but Boone wasn't crazy, he had a reason for being crazy. You can't avoid it unless you have to. When I say have to, don't act like you have to. It's not because of money. I mean that it's an absolute must." These were the words he used that made his students want to learn more.